topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the host and their guests, and not those of W4CS Radio, its employees, or affiliates. W4CS makes no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening to the Cancer Support Network on W4CS.com.
Hey, good day, and thank you once again for joining us for another pause moment. Actually, today is a great day for a pause moment, honestly. I feel like the weather kind of is bringing this sense of, trying to just work on what's going on in the house, or additionally even getting some of the things done at the office. And so that's what's kind of on my plate today, is trying to figure out how much of this office stuff can I get together, right? And so what I've been looking at is the piles, the things that I keep saying that I'm going to get to, and clearly I'm not getting to it. Just even the alignment of the books on the shelf right now could be somewhat of an indication that I got to get to some of this stuff. Outside of that, it's one of those times in the year, the season, you know what I mean, where a lot of things are pressing on you in different ways. You know, it's great to have the weather nice and all the different things kind of out there that is uplifting in reference to your environmental, the green in the trees, additionally the grass, the flowers, those type of things. But then also the outside activity and your ability to be out and about. Especially if you're up here and in the north, it's got all the seasons. But at the same time, it's also a time where you're wanting to kind of get a lot done in a short time span. You know, like kids are off from school, you got a little bit more time to focus on X, Y, and Z, and you're figuring out, well, how do I attack it, right? But then as you try to attack it, you realize how many more things keep coming at you. And it impedes on you, you know, to the point where sometimes you just don't do anything. And that, I found in my life, is just caused a pileup effect of different things that brought on even more emotions at the end of the day. So I've been trying to figure out, okay, what can I control and what can't I control, right? And so I'm even like trying to get little reminders around the house, right, that remind me of what I can control and what I can't control, right? Like disease process wise, there's some things I can control, i.e. I can control what I eat. Additionally, if I exercise, keeping my attitude and my spirit upbeat, those type of things, you know, I have the choice to keep moving forward with. But at the same time, I also have these things that I can't control, you know, and so it's just kind of balancing all of those. Like right now, when I know podcast and they want, and so yes, I try to control him, and there's just no control, all in all. So I just think that it's really just not trying to allow everything to affect you. You know what I mean? And also putting a idea of like, okay, well, how am I what things are affecting me and why are they affecting me, you know? So all in all, I think when I've been looking at it, and I think I've even shared it in a couple of posts over the weeks, is just how basically we have these bags, and I like to say either my suitcase or my backpack, you know what I mean, that is making everything just a little bit harder to get motivated to do, right? So if you look here, right, and I can just bring it up as our main screen here, or even actually Juan can do that for me. But at the same time, what we're trying to do is like unpack some of these bags, right, and figure out of the bag what we can let go of, right? Now, is that saying, hey, listen, let's just unpack the whole bag and get rid of everything? You got to remember that in this bag, there are some gems. There are some things, that you could actually keep as wisdom in the wounds. And so, as we look at some of the bags that I foresee that a lot of people having trouble with, is one, just that guilt and shame, right? That comes with a whole bunch of different types of losses, but then at the same time, this past pain, then these people's expectations, and then also the reality of us always thinking about what others think. There's a personal standard, don't get me wrong, you know what I mean? But then it's always this like pressing thoughts of what others will think. And so there's this perfectionism and, this people pleasing that we're always trying to do. And so, um, oh, look who's here. You didn't know this, but I just was talking about you because,
Oh,
well,
what? In the people
one,
pleasing? When you were talking about people pleasing or
no,
perfectionism?
I wasn't even there yet. I was talking
Oh,
about you being so loud in the other room and distracting me that I wasn't able to actually concentrate on my podcast and how I'm trying to not let it affect me, i.e., like this moving around of the camera that you're doing that's driving me crazy too. And I'm trying to unpack that bag.
nice.
Right,
I'll
nice.
try to keep it still, but because my normal mode of being on these on these podcasts
I
is
can't even hear you. You're making so much noise moving. I can't hear you.
I said my normal mode of being involved, being a participant in these podcasts, I don't have available to me because it has been destroyed. Um, I'm using a different device, and it's kind of small, and I've been having a little difficulties with my vision recently. So I'm just trying to adjust. I'm just trying to adjust it so that I can see.
Got you. Well, the thing is, we need to hear you at the same time.
Can you
So,
hear me?
oh, I can hear you. I can hear you. What we're trying to do is actually zone into the bags that we unpack. And so, I don't know if you can see on your tiny screen.
Guilt and shame, past pain, people's expectations, perfectionism, and people pleasing.
Right. So we were just talking about how this was a post that I had placed on that basically I cannot hear well, but that basically was zoning into the different losses that we can kind of have and how those losses can also bring out some of the guilt and shame, but also the pain, and then others expectations of us, and then also perfectionism and people pleasing. And so some of the areas that when we're in a loss, what some of the areas that I find people dealing with is, hearing what other people are saying to them, in reference to how they should handle things or how they should be feeling at the end of the day. And so that portion of things has been very difficult, I think, for a lot of people to really be able to deal with their loss, in whatever way. Like if you're told to stifle yourself, a lot of times in the midst of your emotions, it becomes very hard for someone to think it's okay to cry, or I mean, even think to yourself, even at like on the playground, somebody hurts themselves, and even at 4 and 5 years old, they're already saying, cry baby, cry baby. So I feel the emotions that haven't been able to be addressed. And we as a society basically haven't been also really well taught in reference to how to deal with loss. I think we know very well once we're getting everything, but if we lose it, it's a whole nother story. And so I guess the area here would be like people's expectations of us in the midst of a loss kind of affect how we can move and how they do it. You know what I mean? If you lost your job and somebody, says to you, hey, listen, well, you're young, uh, necessarily, and how it's just pushing you. So that is some of what I think it just keeps affecting people, you know what I mean, more and pushing them or keeping them where they're at. So, sorry, did you have something to say? Why do you say no?
Because I'm just listening. I'm listening to what you're saying and formulating some thoughts towards what you're saying, because there's a lot that you said that I agree with already, especially
Oh,
with the,
wait, stop right there. Say it again. Say it again. Say it again.
there's a lot that you said that I agree with already. Uh,
Yay! Sorry.
Specifically with the crybaby thing. And so one of the things that I've been finding myself telling a lot of adults in in the field that we're in, there's usually a lot of crying that's going to come in that when dealing with families in the funeral industry. And so one of the things that I've been finding myself telling people lately is that it's okay to cry. Um, don't don't hold it in, because crying is an emotional response, and it lets people know that you are emotionally connected to the situation. And what I've found is that when people try to hold it in, it's not necessarily pride. It's more so they don't feel comfortable or safe around whom or around the people that they currently find themselves around. Because if they feel comfortable, if they feel that it is a safe space, then they will let their emotions go. And so not feeling emotionally safe is what holds them back from displaying or showing their emotions. And so I just let them know, well, if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel that the environment you're finding yourself in will allow you to show your emotional connection, and maybe you need to check your space. Maybe you need to get out of that space and find a space where you feel safe. where you feel comfortable, where you feel that no one would look at you in a light that you don't want to be seen in at that
Right.
moment. And maybe you need to check the people that you find yourself around. Because if you don't feel comfortable enough to be emotional around those people, then that's probably an area that you need to unpack and and find some new things to carry around, because you're carrying around stuff that isn't necessarily right for you. It's not necessarily safe for you, and it's important also with that whole crying piece, because I believe that that's also part of a healing process, because it's so connected to the emotions.
Right.
And where people need to be healed at is from the inside out. They try to heal from the outside in, but that never works, because all you're doing is putting on that facade, um, to match what was that other, I think it was the second or the third level box, the people's expectations.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so have an external entity broken. And so because the and really weak. So you in order to build a stronger house. So the outside could look like $1 million, but how long is it gonna last if the inside's damaged? So yeah, looking like you're frozen or you're really deep in thought.
Oh, I think I lost. Can you hear me there?
I can hear you now.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I ended up popping out as you were talking, but I heard about the foundation. But I was trying to get off the same, basically, the same internet that you're on, just so we wouldn't be affected as much. I was hearing glitches on your end.
But I was finished. It was just basically the you really can't, shouldn't, not can't, but you should not worry about
Others.
um, others' expectations of you. And one of the things I say to to people when I'm talking to them about expectations is, expectations are cool if you share them, but if you don't share the expectations, then you're setting the person that you have those expectations for, you're setting them up for failure.
Mm,
And so if I expect somebody to do something and they don't do it, then I'm mad at them.
right.
But if they don't know that that's my expectation, then how are they going to succeed? So I have to share the expectation. And then that's where, people use that term, hi, Auntie, how are you? People use that term, common sense,
Mm,
common ground, common sense. I don't like that. Um, I don't like that term, because I don't believe that common sense actually exists
hmm.
until you share it with someone, because now we have common sense. We have a sense of something in common because I shared it with you. You don't necessarily have to agree with it, but at least I shared it with you. And if it is right, then now we have common sense. But unless it's shared, it's not common. And
Right.
so it's the same with expectations. If I don't share my expectations with you, I'm setting you up to fail because I'm expecting you to do something that you're unaware that that's an expectation I have. And
Right.
so you have to share it. Otherwise, I'm setting you up to fail. So people's expectations, if they don't share them with you, don't worry about them. At least that's
Right.
my thought. And, you know, sometimes
Right.
it makes people
That
angry
yeah.
with them.
I was about to say that would have been gone too far to the left for me, but because I feel there's also a why, like you're saying, that insecurity that's there brings this why I'm not sharing, right? Or I'm not putting my expectations out on the table per se because of some factor. Now, whether it has to do anything with the person at hand, there's always the question mark, and that's the pause moment most of the people are needing to take to really like look inward and figure out what's what and how really how much you bring into a situation and additionally how much the other person is bringing into it. And I think it's sometimes the things in our backpacks, you know what I mean? Each one of us have a different a backpack that is filled with different experiences and this exposure, when you're talking about common sense, that's like me being exposed to the same things that you were exposed to so that I had this knowledge and was not ignorant to the fact anymore, right? And so I think um, in even in my relationship with John, you know what I mean? Or even my relationships with even friends, if we didn't grow up in the same environments, then there's baggages that were carried in, and additionally made it hard for us to understand each other per se, and sometimes even could trigger things as I'm saying something or he's saying something or a friend, or even a friend of mine has said something that it's triggered something because we didn't walk that same path and we didn't know specifically, to what extent things, really were affecting people, or how they affect them or why their actions are their actions, Um, but I want to say hi to Arthi real quick, like official, and let her get in on this convo.
Hi, you all. Sorry,
Can you
I'm
hear us?
a little behind
No, it's okay.
schedule.
John, can you mute you? Because you're got a lot of noise.
Sorry, that was me with that truck, that back and forth truck. Um,
Oh, that's you. Okay.
I noticed it's me with the noise. Yeah, not John. I was just looking at your background, Dari, with the grief recovery method book.
Oh,
I always know that.
right.
But John, some of the things you were talking about expectations. So I had a question. So sometimes when people do state their expectations, and you feel like you can't meet them or they feel unrealistic, what do you think about that baggage that everybody holds?
I think you need to let a person know if they share with you, which they should, if they share their expectations with you, and you feel that it's an unrealistic or unobtainable expectation for you, whether it's mental, emotional, physical, financial, whatever area it is, that it's incumbent upon the person to say, "Hey, that's an unrealistic expectation. I can't reach that. I can't meet that." And once you say you can or you can't, then it's up to them to either change their expectations or figure out something else. Because I can't say to Daria, "Hey, babe, I expect you to clean the house, cook the dinner, mow the lawn, take the dog out, run the funeral business, take care of the kids." Tell her those are my expectations. And then her not say, "That's unrealistic. I can't be in 8 places at one time to do all of those things." But if she never says that, then I've shared my expectation, and in her silence, that's like, okay, I'm gonna try to do those things, or I'm gonna make that happen. And so when I don't see those things happening, then I'm upset. And then when I go and say, hey, I thought you were gonna, I never said I was gonna do all of that. Well, you never said you couldn't. And so if you don't say you can't, then then you're leaving the person with the hope that you're going to meet their expectations. And so you have to, and that's why it's necessary to share your expectations with the individual that you have expectations of, so that now you're giving them the opportunity to say, I can or I can't. But if that individual never says I can or I can't, the silence automatically says yes I can, because silence is basically a the quiet way of being complicit, of saying, yeah, I could do that, I'll try it, I'll make it happen. But if you know you, and there's no shame in, and I think that's what happens, goes to that first bag, says there's shame and guilt. Like I don't want to say that I can't do something, because now I have a personal, the way I feel about myself, I can do anything. So if somebody brings me some stuff and says, I expect you to be able to do, and you know you can't, but out of shame or not wanting to feel ashamed of saying I can't, then you try to, or you don't say it. And now you have to live trying to meet this unrealistic goal. And so you have to know what you're capable of doing and what you're incapable of doing, and just be willing to say, I can't do that. That's not gonna happen. And I'm the kind of person that will tell you, yeah, I can do that. Nah, that's not gonna happen. I'm not doing that. I can't do that. And I don't have any shame in that. Especially I know if it's gonna create problems down the line when that expectation is not met. And so if somebody comes to you with something unrealistic, I think the best thing to do is say, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to reach that goal. Let's try to see if we can change it up a little bit. I could probably do this, but I can't do this and that. Or I can do these things, but those things aren't going to be met. And it's just a willingness to say what you can and can't do, and you absolutely have to know your ability.
Yeah, I feel like that expectation game, it's always it's a hard one too, because when you're thinking about a person that's dealing with loss, right, they a lot of times don't really know what they can and can't do, you know what I mean, or they're trying to hoodwink themselves into thinking that they can, right? But then there is, yes, somebody that does have to kind of possibly pull their coattails to say, hey, listen, if that might be unrealistic, you know what I mean? I've had people say that they're going to like recover from their grief, just give me a few months. And like on my end, I'm like, people like take years, you know what I mean? So it's the expectations of people. I feel like it all speaks a lot to us being afraid of what of our feelings, or other people's feelings as well. You know what I mean? And trying to really understand, okay, what is this person feeling, so that's making them function like this. So I think if you're trying to, wean out some of the what you bring into it, you know what I mean, is figuring out, okay, why am I keep saying yes when I need to be saying no? You know what I mean? That's also impede every time I say yes, right? And I don't achieve that goal, that thing that I was trying to achieve. It affects my own personal, like, integrity, you know what I mean? And how I start feeling about myself. So it's trying to figure out, well, how do we also stop this habitual action, these habitual things that come out of our grieving moments, like always saying yes, right, could also be, and always taking on like a job here, helping this one out, or doing this. That's like a workaholic kind of thing. But is that coming out of a loss, and figuring out, well, what did we pick up this habit that has then become unhealthy? I feel like in some of my worst times, to deflect, I would, possibly even like work more or try to get inward more. I've, tried to even be focused more on self and not, all that was around me. So there's been like these things that, I picked up over time, that some were okay and the others were just like, like working out. Like I said in our last pause moment, was we were talking about how, I had picked out working out, and how that was a great thing. But then can get to the point where you're not eating all of the nutrients and things that you need, because you're so worried about the body and the self and the this and the looks of what other people think, and things like that. And so there's a lot of balance, I feel like we need to figure out in addressing any of it, Arthi, in reference to some of the things that you've experienced, maybe even culturally, or when your faith has come to the forefront. So I know you've had some really big losses in your life, and how has your faith base affected that, whether it be the people, or additionally what you've been told about your faith, and your understanding in reference to how you've been able to try to heal over time?
That's a great question. I feel like that principle or spirituality plays a huge role in dealing with grief and loss issues, or there is this evaluation of not only the loss of that person, and we don't even have to talk about people, sometimes even the loss of something like your house from a fire, or you start to evaluate your own sense of your own, not only that mortality of that person, but then your own mortality, which then I do think, in some reflection, even people who claim that they're atheists find themselves trying to have these existential conversations with themselves. What is the purpose of life? What does it all mean? What am I supposed to be doing? Or and so for me personally, yeah, faith has always, I grew up in a spiritual home. And so for me, I remember trying to make sense of my dad's loss. So the Bhagavad Gita is the Bible of the Hindus. And so I remember my mom reading some things in Sanskrit, and I would translate them. And so I made this yellow poster. I still remember. It's like, remember neon yellow posters? Really? And so it was just this purpose of life. What is the soul? Like, the translation loosely came out to, what is the soul? What is the soul's purpose? It neither lives nor dies. And so that was kind of grounding to go through some of those principles. And then for my mom's eulogy, I lose everything, but I also find everything when I need it. I found it, and I used that as part of, like, this is how it kind of works, that the soul's purpose, it neither lives nor dies. It's just that the human condition of the body does leave. And so for me, faith has definitely been grounding. And I think people who realize that when you start to question your spirituality, what is it? Mind, body, spirit. I think the grounding does come to knowing that there's something there, not religious context, but something there. So yeah, I do feel like that conversation does happen. And I did want to touch upon something, John, when you were talking about baggage, all I could think when you were discussing expectations. So I was thinking about just like female and male energy when you were talking about this, and I was thinking about culturally, when Daria was asking about culture. So I find in silence, women will often, and I know I'm kind of pigeonholing, but many women will silence themselves in the expectation of what and I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I think one of the demises that it's happening in our American culture, I think, is that women are required, quote unquote, to do it all, but also want to do it all. But then they're not communicating to, if they have a partner or in relationship, they're not communicating the expectations of how they can help meet those expectations. So they're not, it's this really interesting piece that I'm have been thinking about since yesterday. And it's interesting we're having conversations about baggage, because I do think women are now very much under baggage of trying to do it all, but not being a master of any of it. And so then there's a lot of, we talk about the man being the pillar of the home, but then we're talking about the female also being grounded enough to carry the home. And it's, so I feel like there's this off balance energy right now that is leading to this baggage, in my opinion. What do y'all think?
I definitely agree. I mean, the expectation of the male and the female from the beginning, you know, in reference to what the male should do, what the female should do, that was just baggage we came in, which, you know, held us back down from trying to even lift up, you know. And then as obviously time has gone on and you know, women have shifted in their positions and roles, and we're still fighting for the same amount of money. But at the same time, I think that it is very hard for relationships to across the board, right, to really succeed if there's no communication, you know, and that's no communication. Now let's just talk about a little communication, right? Let's just talk about now getting transparent, naked, and putting it out there. There's different levels, you know what I mean, of being in this relationship that we communicate. You know what I mean? Like, I can communicate with you on this level, I can communicate with you on that level, but how much am I really like telling you, okay, this makes me feel like this, thus it's making me act like this, that's making us now have a habitual way of interacting with each other like this, you know? And so I think that when we're talking about people, you know, trying to understand people and expectations, just like John was saying, having that communicating thing, you know, is very key. If I don't know, how am I supposed to do? You know, I'm my own person still, right? And that becoming one that they talk about within Christianity when we're talking about getting married to somebody, it's this whole like trying to figure out, well, how do we do that? And the only way is communication. You know what I mean? I'll never know clearly, you know what I mean, what you're thinking. You know, I'm not in your brain. I won't know every like twist of a thought. You know what I mean? And so I think that does cause a consistent divide. That's why, you know, people that have actually gone to marriage counseling, they've enjoyed it, whether it's all hit, you know, home. I think it gets a lot of stuff out on the table in a quicker, you know, and in a different environment, but it doesn't necessarily make change in people's behaviors and function. You know, they know, you know, it's like AAA, like I know there's a problem, right? But that doesn't always create the full shift that you need. And so I think that consistent communication is necessary for, and that's in all aspects of relationships across the board. You know what I mean? And especially if we're talking about married ones, or even when we're talking about, hey, I'm getting ready to I want to marry this person. Do you know them? You know, can you really go there? So, but John, what were you thinking?
I was thinking. I was thinking. But I don't know if I was thinking. Nah. I think that a couple thoughts. In the beginning, right? In the absolute beginning, I don't believe that, you know, we say that Men are the hunters and gatherers, and women are the everything else, right? And what that says to me is that there's a partnership. Most partnerships, specific role, but then there's those shared roles to a goal. And I find in the separate uh, the words of patriarchs that there was a line that was drawn and no one wanted to cross over that line. And that's kind of where I believe things got messed up. And I would say that it was a blessing. Part of the blessing that I received in being the product of a single parent household was that I got to witness my mother doing everything. And in her doing everything, I learned how to do all of the things that were necessary to maintain a household, from um, cooking, cleaning, understanding the bills and what needed to be done so that the lights stayed on and that the electricity was in, the heat and the food in the refrigerator, and maintaining all of the aspects of running a household. And then also being able to provide for that household. And so when I stepped into relationship, into a marriage, um, I didn't have the expectations that my wife was going to be the sole person solely responsible for cooking and cleaning and doing laundry and taking care of the household. And I never had those expectations. And because quite honestly, I enjoy the cooking, I enjoy the cleaning. And not because I think I do it better than most females, but because
Most.
huh?
I said most.
But it's more so that I have a particular way that I envision things to be done so that the entire house can enjoy what we're trying to create. And so I believe it got kind of messed up along the lines where, you know, what men created a system and women fell in line, so to speak, and did not give too much pushback as far as the whole. Of course, there are those, that percentage, which I don't know, and I don't like using. I mean, I just had a conversation with someone just the other day because they kept using words like most and all, and you don't know most, you don't know all. And so you can say there is a percentage that exists. I don't know what it is, but it is a percentage that has given pushback onto those gender roles within a house. And I'm not talking, the letters. I'm talking what a man is supposed to do and what a woman is supposed to do. I don't believe that there's a somebody's supposed to and somebody else is supposed to do this. If you're capable, get it done. If you're incapable, ask for help.
Right.
That's
Right.
just what I believe. And that's what I try to instill in the kids as well. Not
Mm.
just mine, but in any child or young person that I encounter. Like if you're capable of doing it, do it. Get it done. And if you need help, ask for help.
Except
Uh,
for the trash. He doesn't let the girls do the trash.
yeah, because and that goes Not because I think that that's a man thing. No, it's just I know trash going out, if it's not done properly, when you go to open the trash can the next time you open it, you might see 1,000 maggots because you let flies get into the trash. So it has to be tied up properly. The barrel has to be shut right. The things that there's just, again, back to there's certain ways that things need to be done. It's not necessarily those things have to be done by certain people. That's, and so sometimes it's just easier to do it yourself. And so those things, it's just easier to do.
Right.
um
Welcome to my house.
yeah, absolutely. But I think that, we fall into certain roles, and not necessarily because we believe that those are the roles. We just have been trained, um by watching and seeing it happen, or trained because we've been taught that this is. And sometimes we have to, unteach, unlearn some things that we were taught, whether it was taught intentionally or just by visualizing and seeing it. We have to unlearn those things so that we can, become better in the relationships and for ourselves.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely. A lot. Yeah. In the relationship itself, because I think it's also figuring out, how much of that is somebody else's baggage that we're bringing into it too. Like you said, this observed aspect of things, like what we observed our parents do, or what we've observed, happen in our community, and or what we've seen on the news, and these understandings of
Or,
people,
t-
places, and
or
environments.
even just or even just the TV shows we watched growing up. I mean, because when you watch shows like Leave It, and I'm gonna age myself, but when you watch shows like The Brady Bunch or Leave It to Beaver, or even Dick Van Dyke Show, you see the husband leaving every day and the mother staying home. And then the kids going off to school, and then the kids coming back, and there's snacks and lunch, and everybody's upstairs and coming down and grabbing lunches that made because the mother's sitting at the kitchen preparing everybody's lunch, all the way from the youngest child up to the husband. They're grabbing the stuff, walking
Right.
out the door, kissing her on the cheek, and she's staying at
So
home.
what does that do? Right. I'm just thinking, like,
Psychologically,
so what did watching that, did you feel? Yeah, I was about to say, how does that make you feel when you don't have a house like that? You know what I'm saying? That has all of these pieces that are supposedly how it should be. How does that make people feel in reference to their lives, and how they look at themselves, and what even their families, I think when you think about like divorce, the divorce rate is at like 50 something percent right now. So if you're talking about divorce being that high, how many children are dealing with the effects of their parents' relationships, and how, now that leave It to Beaver, that household, that Bill Cosby show, you know what I mean? Whatever it may be, how is that now crumbled in their spirit? I remember being a kid and struggling with, that question mark of, okay, if they're arguing, what does this mean? You know what I mean? And does this mean the end, or whatever the case may be? And so there's a lot that you become insecure with that makes you then function in a certain way. And so I don't know. I definitely know that this is an area we could go on and on talking
On
about.
we have a minute left of our show for today, but we could definitely do part 3.
Part 3. That's what I'm thinking too, because this baggage thing, this bad boy is pretty hefty, all across the board, whether it be from the professional level, the faith-based level, what we bring from our families and growing up, additionally, what we've seen, our experiences that have, allowed us to put some boulders in the backpack as well. So I think definitely another pause moment and having this time to just reflect on some of that. But taking the time, I invite people to take the time and just kind of write out some of these losses in your life and, how you might have been affected by them in those journal moments. So good to talk to you guys again. And thank you, John. I'll talk to you soon, Arti. God bless you guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.